Do you remember how Odin mentioned the death of the first giant Ymir in God of War Ragnarok? Indeed, Odin described Ymir as a storm, a force of the nature that he had to eliminate. In the real mythology or in the God of War universe, both creation stories explain that Odin slew Ymir using his body to create the other realms. However, the God of War mythology took one special and important liberty with this event. They added the enigmatic rift to this story. Now, with this mystery, there are thousands of questions. We can even ask ourselves how the brothers of Odin reacted to the rift, considering that they were here when this rift appeared. With the presence of this rift in the God of War universe, we can speculate about so many things for the future of the franchise, but there is one specific aspect that interests me and fascinates me more than anything else. So let me ask you this question. Is there other rifts in the God of War universe? To answer this question, we will need to look at the circumstances of the death of Ymir, because understanding why the rift exists will be the way to speculate about the presence of rift in the mythologies that possess similar creation stories that the one of Ymir. So to begin with, how did the rift appear? Well, the sources that we have concerning the rift comes all from the same evil character, Odin. This is a personal opinion, but I'm pretty sure that the majority of the details that Odin gave to Atreus about the rift are actually real and perfectly true, except of course for his family excuse, obviously. Here we need to look at the life of Odin and at his situation during the event of God of War Ragnarok. At this moment, Odin is near to the Ragnarok. He needs to look into the rift in order to find his answer and avoid the prophecy of his death. During this story, he will try everything to get what he wants, even if his manipulation will lead him to tell the truth about some details of the rift and the mask to Atreus. In fact, Odin is really suspicious about two things in my opinion. First of all, Odin never mentioned his brothers when he told to Atreus why he killed Ymir, which is a real mystery when we think about it. The mule of the giants mentioned that they were here to help him kill Ymir, so why did he lie about them? Why did Odin hide their existence to Atreus? The second possible lie could also be linked to his brothers, because Odin explained to Atreus that he lost his eye when he looked into the rift, but personally I don't think that he lost his eye that way. In fact, the mule of Ymir shows us that Odin killed Ymir with his brothers, so what can prove us that he didn't send one of his brothers to look into the rift? Maybe that he convinced one of them, or maybe that he physically forced them to look inside. Now, this is the information that I'm not confident with, but for the rest, everything that Odin said seems logical to me. Atreus found himself that the rift appeared at the location of the death of Ymir. He forced Odin himself to reveal the circumstances of the death of Ymir. This is in this cutscene that Odin explained to Atreus that the rift appeared at the death of the primordial giant, so this is a confirmed information. The rift is a direct consequence of the murder of Ymir, which means that when Odin sacrificed Ymir to create the world, he ultimately provoked the appearance of this rift. So this is how the rift appeared, but why did the rift appear? Why such a specific situation provoked the appearance of the rift? Well, the concept of sacrifice is my answer. Indeed, the sacrifices are a pretty recurrent theme of the franchise. Orcos had to sacrifice himself to help Kratos getting free of his deal with Ares. Freyr sacrificed himself in order to help his friends against the Ragnarok, and of course Athena died protecting her father, which made her ascend to a higher level of existence. These sacrifices are meaningful for the franchise, but the thing is that the rift didn't appear after a random sacrifice, but with the sacrifice of a creature that possessed an exceptional potential of creation. Like instance, the Ragnarok, that is a fusion of two primordial giants, was capable to destroy an entire realm, so now imagine the unlimited power of the first giant of this mythology. The All-Father used his entire body to create the other realm, so it is clear that a huge part of his power was used, but nothing says that the whole power has been used. The sources of power that live in this rift did not appear out of nowhere, but appeared after the sacrifice of Ymir, the first giant. I repeated this a lot, but from what we saw, This sacrifice was the only one of the franchise that provoked such a mysterious thing. Yes, I know Athena achieved her highest form of existence after her heroic sacrifice, but both situations are still extremely different even with the disturbing similarities. The powers of these two important characters are far too different, and Ymir didn't return with a higher dimensional form like Athena did. However, we can't deny that the mystical energy of Athena strangely looks like the energy of the rift. Now, is Athena connected with this mystical energy thanks to her higher form? This is a question, and this is why so many fans theorize about the death of Thor and Freyr, because they died like heroic gods for a better future like Athena. Indeed, there is similarities, and her sacrifice permitted her to live in another form, but nothing can prove us that she is the only deity that achieved this form in this universe. Like instance, the Egyptian god named Osiris resurrected from his death, becoming a powerful god of the underworld that is depicted with a green skin symbolizing the rebirth and the life. So with this type of characters, what can stop the writers to tell the story where Osiris did not die by the hand of Seth, but in fact sacrificed himself to save Atreus or someone else, and later became the protector of the underworld that obtained the higher form of existence? In my opinion, this explanation is possible considering that his mythological depiction looks similar to the mystical form of Athena. To me, everything is possible in this universe. I imagine that there are plenty of other stories of gods that sacrificed themselves in the other myths, so why not having other gods that obtain this form? After all, the mystical energy of the mask is connected to the rift, which shows us that the languages of the other mythologies are also connected to the rift, the same way that Athena maybe influenced the obsession of Odin for the rift, whispering and talking to him throughout the energy of the rift. So now let's imagine that other mythology presents almost similar conditions that the death of Ymir in their cosmology. Let's imagine that the death of the primordial beings of the other mythologies also provoked the apparition of rifts, showing that the rift of Ymir is not the only one in this universe. So if you are ready, I will do the best that I can to describe the creation stories of the two following mythologies. Have you ever heard about the story of the Babylonian god Marduk that killed a goddess, mistress of the chaos, named Tiamat? This legendary story starts in the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian epic of creation. This writing describes the beginning of the times as an empty world deprived of any element except for two primordial things: the soft water personified by the god Apsu and the salt water personified by the goddess Tiamat. By mixing together, they gave birth to the first generation of deities. Apsu, disturbed by his children, planned to kill them, but Ea, the most intelligent of these gods, understood his father's plan and killed him. When Tiamat discovered the death of Apsu, she raised the terrifying monsters and demons and swore to destroy her children until the end. In her anger, she creates the warrior Kingu, married him, and gave him the tablets of destiny where is written the fate of all the living beings. The gods, afraid of their mother's power, needed someone. They needed the strength and the wisdom of a powerful god, and this is why Ea and his wife Dankina gave birth to the god named Marduk. Once born, Marduk explains to them that he can defeat Tiamat, but in exchange he wants them to make him their king. The gods accepted, which directly provoked the capture and the death of Tiamat by the hand of Marduk. After that, he sheared her body in two, creating the heavens from one half and the earth from the other half. With the eyes of Tiamat, he formed the Lake of Tiger and Euphrates, and ultimately became the king of the gods after this triumph. Indeed, this story of familial chaos has a lot of similarities with the father and son cycle of destruction of the Greek mythology, but this legendary story is not the one that I want to make the comparison with. In fact, the assassination of Tiamat and the creation of the Babylonian world definitely looks like the death of Ymir, the first giant. With this story, no matter if we look at the Norse mythology or at the godofwar mythology, in both stories the gods considered that the primordial being was a threat and that his death was necessary. Tiamat and Ymir were primordial beings that possessed extraordinary powers. When Odin, Vili and Vi killed Ymir, they fashioned the realms with his body, the same way that Marduk fashioned the Babylonian world before becoming the mighty god like Odin. Indeed, the mask is connected with three mythologies that all lived major sacrifices in their creation stories, but the Babylonian mythology is nowhere to be seen in this mask. In the Japanese mythology, Izanami, that was initially a goddess of creation, died when she gave birth to her son, provoking important events and conflicts in the beginning of this world. In the Egyptian mythology, Horus the Elder died in a bloody war against Seth, preventing the universe to collapse, but he resurrected later as an even bigger legend as the child of Isis and Osiris. In the Greek mythology, Kronos castrated his father, which gave birth to Aphrodite and other gods. This is a fact the languages inscribed in the mask shows us that the rift is connected with the other mythology, considering that they both share the same mystical energy. The mask is the ultimate proof that the rift of Ymir is not a concept that is unique to the Norse world of God of War, and this is even more real considering that the pieces of the mask resided in the primordial realms that were present long time before the birth of Ymir. Now, if I have to theorize about the presence of the Greek, the Japanese and the Egyptian languages inscribed in the mask, I think that their presence is more a reference from the developers for the future destinations of Atreus than the mystical power hidden in those mythologies. Indeed, 2018 and Ragnarok teased the Egyptian and the Japanese mythology many times, and as for the Greek mythology, I have made a video about the reconstruction of this world, where Atreus meet the possible gods that helped the mortals to reconstruct this world. But anyway, let's go back to the theory. So like I said, if the mystical energy of the Rift of Ymir has connection with other mythologies, so why will this rift be the only one in this God of War universe? Indeed, the conditions of the death of Tiamat are almost similar to the conditions of the death of Ymir, so what can prove us that the rift didn't appear out there? My third example is more optimistic than what we previously saw, even if the phonology of the story is pretty similar to the story of Tiamat and Ymir. So without waiting any longer, let me introduce my third primordial being that is at the origins of the Chinese mythology. According to Taoism, the universe reigned in the chaos before that the cosmic egg emerged and took shape over 80,000 years. This egg contained the first living being, Pangu, a creature half divine and half human. When he broke the egg, the transparent parts floated away to form the sky, while the heavy parts floated away to form the earth. Faced with this situation, Pangu stood up to solidify them by separating them. Pangu did this for another 80,000 years before collapsing and dying. From his breath came wind and clouds. His voice became thunder, his left eye the sun, his right eye the moon. The other part of his body gave birth to the building blocks of the earth, such as mountains, rivers, trees, and rocks. His true sacrifice brought balance to the creation of this world, which makes him totally different from Tiamat and Ymir, who were both killed and used by the gods. The difference with them is real, but the finality of the story is the same. From their bodies, all things were born, giving stability to the three distinct worlds. According to my theory, the rifts are linked by their concept of sacrifice, but nothing says that the powers that they hold are similar in every aspect. The death of Pangu is very different from the death of Tiamat and Ymir, that are very similar to each other, so perhaps that his rift will show other faculties and powers than the rift of Ymir. Now I know that all of this is just supposition, but fortunately we have two elements of the God of War universe that may certainly make this theory possible: Atreus and the mask. Just look. During the entirety of the life of Odin, he had searched to every possible way to reach the rift, and one day, a boy, son of a god killer that literally provoked the ending and the reborn of another mythology, suddenly appeared in his life. This young giant managed to translate the languages of the mask like it was nothing. He accomplished what the All-Father never managed to do by finding and translating the pieces of the mask. During the Ragnarok, Atreus broke the mask, closing the rift and destroying the hopes of Odin forever. Now imagine that you are a video game writer and that you created the story of the rift and the mask. First of all, by introducing this mystery, you have found a way to lead the character of Odin and Atreus, making them temporary allies. You have also found the way to make them spy each other's, but most importantly, you have captivated the players with the rift and the infinite power that is inside. To me, it's crazy how they used the rift and the mask in the plot, because we can really see how Atreus has grown as a character, while Odin on his side became even worse than before. The game accomplished a lot in terms of storytelling with these two mysteries, and this is the thing. There's way too many things to create with these two mysteries to abandon them forever. There's just way too many questions unanswered. Who created the mask? Why did the rift whisper things to Odin? And most importantly, what happened to Vili and Vi after the apparition of the rift? Now, of course, the future games will have to treat about a lot of things. New pantheons, new conflicts, new issues, but this is precisely why adding the other rift in the future games will be interesting. At the end of God of War Ragnarok, Atreus left the Scandinavia in order to find the giants, so Atreus will certainly have to face powerful gods on his quest. In his journey, Atreus will certainly be in danger even more when we know that Atreus is not Kratos. He don't have his strength, but he is resourceful, and I want to see how they will represent the trickster side of Atreus in the future games. Of course, he will certainly obtain new transformations and weapons, but if Atreus has to confront catastrophic situations, his connection with the mystical elements of the God of War universe could be extremely useful. Like I said, he is the only one who has been able to translate an artifact that allows the possession of the power of the rift. The writers did not introduce a little concept with the rift and the mask, but they have introduced something huge and important that can totally fit with the next games, even more if a war between the mythologies happens. Now I know Ragnarok wonderfully teaches that the quest for the knowledge is pointless and dangerous, and Odin is the best proof of that, but the rift of Tiamat and Pangu could be the way to create new perspectives for the rift in terms of narrative. Now, from a factual point of view, we are not likely to see these two mythologies for a very long time. The next game will be very focused on the Egyptian mythology and perhaps with the Celtic mythology as well. The Babylonian mythology is not a very well-known culture in terms of popularity. Many people know that this is a very ancient culture of our world, especially with the famous story of Gilgamesh, but other than that, the gods of this mythology are rarely represented in the media, and this is precisely why I would love to see this mythology in the future games. The reboot of the franchise in the Norse mythology teach a ton of peoples, and me included, about less popular gods and creatures of this mythology. Of course, the Norse mythology is still one of the most popular, but Santa Monica Studio worked very hard to showcase minor aspects of this mythology in the games. Now it is certain that the focus will be in the Egyptian mythology, and I can't wait to see how Santa Monica Studio will represent this beautiful mythology, but I also love the idea that they will also show less popular mythology in the future games. Like instance, I would love to see the Celtic mythology in the next game. I would love to see their cultures and their gods, because there's tons of things to show with the character of Atreus, and I expect the same things for the Babylonian mythology. The pantheon of gods of this mythology is incredible, and there are so many potentials for giving answers about the rift. I would really love to see how a trickster god like Loki will react to a rift that is protected by so many important gods. Now for the Chinese mythology, this is interesting because since the release of blackmythwukong, the interest of this mythology has grown significantly. In the God of War games, the Japanese mythology was mentioned many times, so it is certain that we will see this mythology before exploring the Chinese world, and this is okay. Both mythologies are extremely different and complete, but now peoples want to see iconic mythological features in the God of War franchise, and Sunwukong really fits with the concept of the God of War games. This legendary god has similarities with both Kratos and Loki, and frankly, we have tons of things to create with this character. Knowing that Loki went in search of the giants, he could meet Sun Wukong at any parts of his research if he traveled throughout Asia. Like instance, he could meet him when he was Sunwukong the trickster, or when he was the disciple of the monk on the journey to the west, or when he finally became the victorious fighting Buddha. In both cases, having him in the franchise could be legendary, so just imagine a story where Loki and Sun Wukong are trying together to find the rift of Pangu. Maybe that they will try to reach this rift to protect this power from evil gods, or maybe that at the contrary they will try to reach and obtain the power that is inside. Having Loki and Sun Wukong looking for the rift of Pangu could be interesting for a possible plot, but is all of this even possible? Well, the Chinese world and the Babylonian world works with pantheon system like the Greek mythology. If we follow the logic of the God of War games, those pantheons will be led by powerful gods and rulers that could be as obsessed as Zeus and Odin about the concept of fear. To me, it seems possible that Marduk and the Jade Emperor could react to their rift the same way that Odin reacted to his rift. The Old Father was obsessed about the rift of Ymir. He was ready to do everything to obtain the power that is inside. This is more than possible that Marduk and the Jade Emperor reacted with the same obsession, but it is also possible that they reacted in a different way with their rift. Maybe that at the contrary the Jade Emperor protected the rift himself, and maybe that Marduk simply destroyed his rift. Maybe that they ignored their rift, knowing that without the mask there is no possibility to reach the power that is inside, or maybe that no rift has appeared yet. Let me explain. Like I said, without the use of the mask it is impossible to obtain the infinite power of this rift, and today Atreus closed the rift when he broke the mask. But nothing says that the rift and the mask are forever doomed because of this action. The rift strives the mask before disappearing, but nothing says that the rift totally disappeared from the God of War universe. Maybe that the rift simply appeared at the location of the death of Tiamat, or at the location of the death of Pangu, explaining that the rift waited to be closed in order to appear in a destination that already contained the energy of the creation. The Chinese mythology and the Babylonian mythology could be the perfect destination for the rift, knowing how important the sacrifice of the first being was in those locations. This possibility could be another explanation for my theory, but like I said, all of this is just speculation and talking about a huge speculation. I suggested in this video that the rift appeared because of two special factors: the death of a creation being and the sacrifice of a creation being. It doesn't remind you of anything? According to the Christianity, God incarnate as a man sacrificed himself for the sins of humanity. Now this may sound silly, but in God of War 2 the destiny of Kratos was predicted in the Temple of the Fates, and all of the predictions were true, except for one specific prediction. In this picture of the future, Kratos and his Norse and Egyptian counterparts are walking together in the direction of Bethlehem. It has been confirmed that this prophecy symbolizes the three wise men attending to the birth of Jesus Christ. Now we know that Kratos redefined his destiny, but is this prophecy still possible? Well, it depends. From one side, the ending of Valhalla is the ultimate proof that Kratos modified his fate and changed the fate of the world. Now that Kratos inspires hope, the wars shown in the ending of God of War 1 are no longer possible in the God of War universe. At the end of 2018, Kratos saw his destiny, but he changed it and prevented it from happening by convincing Thor to be better. In the events of the franchise, Kratos often controlled his destiny, but he also accomplished the prophecies many times. So is this prediction in contradiction with the future of Kratos insinuated in God of War Valhalla? Well, in my opinion, no, and this is pretty much the contrary for me. Tyr is certainly his Norse counterpart, and the Egyptian counterpart will certainly be revealed in the future games. So if Jesus will one day appear in this universe, so he will one day sacrifice himself for the sins of the humans, and for the case of the God of War universe, for the sins of the gods. Now it is certain that if the God of Christianity is the God creator of this universe, this implies that he let the mythologies appear themselves, and that after that he sacrificed himself and established the religion. Now all of this makes me question myself about something. During the time that Jesus died, is this possible that the rift of creation appeared? Indeed, Jesus during his death went to the underworld and then resurrected 3 days after the crucifixion, so is this possible that a rift appeared during this short amount of time? Talking about underworld and heaven, I did not mention it earlier, but Ymir possessed several names in the mythology, or Gelmir, Blair, but the name that interests me the most is the name Ymir. In the Norse myths, the name Ymir also symbolizes a hold for the souls of good men after the end of the prophetic Ragnarok. So Ymir symbolizes a heaven in the Norse mythology, and what is Odin talking about when he looks at the rift?
I don't know where I go when I go. There's no Valhalla for me. Ragnarok cannot be the end. I need to know there's something more than this. I need to know what happens to me.
Yeah, the Heaven Fairy is one of the most solid fairy about the rift, and the thing is that this supposition can also fit with my theory with the other rifts. Maybe that Tiamat joined her loved one Apsu in a physical heaven inside the rift. Maybe that Pangu joined a physical heaven inside the rift after his sacrifice, and maybe that the rift of Jesus also present the final heaven of Christianity, knowing that he conquered the death during those 3 days. Frankly, I'm okay if we don't have any answers or revelations about the Babylonian and the Chinese mythology and their possible rifts. However, we still need answers about Vili and Vi and the role that they played after that they saw the rift. You know, even if the writers decided to end the rift story in Ragnarok, we still need answers about Vili and Vi because they exist. They were introduced in this universe, and we still need to know what happened to them after the apparition of the rift. This is clearly a point that we can't ignore, and I'm really counting on Santa Monica Studio to give a clever answer, because creating mysteries implies responsibility and there are so many stories to tell about the rift. With the horn we can introduce new characters and perspectives by answering to this mystery. With Vili and Vi we can introduce new possible enemies or allies. And of course with the rift and the mask we could theorize during hours and hours. So guys, I think that I've said everything that I wanted to cover in this video. So thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe and to like the video. Goodbye, Spartans.